In the shadow of the Cold War, where the skies themselves became a battleground of ideology and engineering, one aircraft emerged as a symbol of Soviet might, a machine designed to strike fear into the West and challenge the supremacy of NATO's defenses. This is the story of the Tupolev Tu-22M3, known to the world as the Backfire. A supersonic bomber that bridged the gap between brute force and strategic genius. For decades, its silhouette haunted military planners, its capabilities shrouded in secrecy. Today, we peel back the layers of history, technology, and geopolitics to uncover the legacy of this Cold War titan. Welcome to a journey through time, speed, and power. Picture this. It's the late 1960s. The world is locked in a tense standoff. Nuclear annihilation hangs in the balance, and the Soviet Union seeks a weapon to tip the scales. A bomber fast enough to evade interceptors, versatile, enough to strike land and sea, and powerful enough to carry the deadliest payloads imaginable. Enter the Tu-22M, a bold evolution of Soviet aviation. But it's the M3 variant, the Backfire, that would cement its place in history. Let's rewind the clock and dive into its origins. The story begins with the Tupolev Design Bureau, cornerstone of Soviet aerospace innovation. In the early 1960s, the original Tu-22 blinder was already in service, but it was flawed, slow to adapt, difficult to maintain, and outpaced by Western defenses. The Soviet military demanded something better, something revolutionary. By 1967, the Tu-22M was born, an ambitious redesign with variable sweep wings, a feature that would define its agility and speed. The M stood for modernized, but this was no mere upgrade. The Tu-22M was a leap forward, blending lessons from its predecessor with cutting-edge aerodynamics. The first prototype took flight on August 30, 1969, but it was just the beginning. Over the next decade, the design evolved through multiple variants, the M0, M1, and M2. Each iteration refined the airframe, engines, and avionics. Then, in 1977, the Tu-22M3 arrived, the ultimate incarnation of the Backfire. With upgraded Kuznetsov, NK-25 engines, a reinforced structure, and enhanced weaponry, it was a machine built for dominance. Why the nickname Backfire? NATO assigned it this code name, reflecting its ability to strike back with devastating force. To the West, it was a mystery wrapped in propaganda. To the Soviets, it was a triumph of engineering. Let's take a closer look at what makes the Tu-22M3 tick. At its core, this is a supersonic marvel. Its variable geometry wings, capable of sweeping from 20 to 65 degrees, allow it to shift seamlessly between high-speed dashes and low-altitude penetration missions. Fully extended, the wings maximize lift for takeoff and cruising. Swept back, they transform the Backfire into a sleek aero, capable of reaching Mach 188, over 2,300 kilometers per hour. The heart of the beast lies in its twin engines. The Kuznetsov NK-25 turbofans deliver a combined thrust of nearly 50,000 pounds, propelling a 124-ton airframe through the skies. These engines weren't just powerful, they were efficient, giving the Tu-22M3 a range of over 6,800 kilometers with mid-air refueling. That's enough to strike targets across Europe or deep into the Atlantic. The airframe itself is a masterpiece of Soviet metallurgy. Titanium alloys and high-strength steel form a fuselage that can withstand the stresses of supersonic flight. Inside, a crew of 4 operates a complex suite of avionics, navigation systems, radar, and electronic countermeasures designed to outwit enemy defenses. The Tu-22M3's cockpit, though analog by today's standards, was a technological marvel. In its time, balancing human skill with machine precision. And then, there's the weaponry. The Backfire was built to carry an arsenal that could reshape battlefields, or end them entirely. Its payload includes up to 24 tons of bombs, from conventional free-fall munitions to guided weapons. But its true menace lies in its missile capabilities. The KH-22, a massive anti-ship missile with a range of 600 kilometers, and later, the precision-guided KH-32. Nuclear-armed variants of these weapons made the Tu-22M3 a cornerstone of Soviet deterrence. By the 1980s, the Tu-22M3 was a linchpin of Soviet strategy. Its primary mission? To neutralize NATO's naval power in the Atlantic. Imagine this: a squadron of backfires launching from bases in the Soviet Arctic, streaking toward the north. See, at low altitude, their KH-22 missiles primed to sink aircraft carriers and destroyers. This wasn't just a hypothetical, it was a scenario that kept Western admirals awake at night. The Backfire's versatility extended beyond maritime strikes. It could penetrate deep into enemy territory, targeting air bases, command centers, and industrial hubs. Its speed and low-level flight profile made it a nightmare for radar operators. During exercises, Soviet pilots honed their skills, flying mock attacks that showcased the aircraft's ability to evade interceptors like the American F-14 Tomcat or the British Tornado. But the Tu-22M3 wasn't invincible. Its development came at a cost, both financial and political. The SALT II treaty negotiations saw the Backfire at the center of heated debates. The U.S. feared its intercontinental potential, while the Soviets insisted it was a theater-range bomber. In truth, with refueling, it could reach North America, though such missions were never its primary role. This ambiguity only fueled its mystique. The Tu-22M3's combat debut came later than expected. During the Soviet-Afghan War, earlier variants saw limited action, but the M3 remained in reserve, a strategic asset too valuable for counterinsurgency. It wasn't until the post-Soviet era that the Backfire truly spread its wings. In 2015, Russia deployed the Tu-22M3 in Syria, raining precision-guided bombs on terrorist targets. Footage of these missions, huge explosions lighting up the night, reintroduced the Backfire to a global audience. It was a statement. This Cold War relic was still a force to be reckoned with. More recently, in the 2022 Ukraine conflict, the Tu-22M3 has been spotted launching KH-32 missiles, proving its adaptability to modern warfare. Yet, age is catching up. Maintenance costs are soaring, and spare parts are scarce. The Russian Air Force has modernized some airframes, but the Tu-22M3's days may be numbered as newer platforms like the Tu-160M take center stage. So, what is the legacy of the Tu-22M3 Backfire? It's more than a machine. It's a testament to human ingenuity and the relentless pursuit of power. For over 4 decades, it shaped military doctrine, influenced arms races, and stood as a symbol of Cold War brinkmanship. Its roar still echoes in the skies, a reminder of an era when the world teetered on the edge. Today, aviation enthusiasts and historians alike marvel at its design. Pilots who flew it speak of its raw power and unforgiving nature. Adversaries who faced it recall the dread of its shadow. The Tu-22M3 wasn't just a bomber. It was a statement, a challenge, a backfire against the status quo. As we close this chapter, consider this. The Backfire's story isn't over. Whether in museums, documentaries, or the arsenals of a changing world, its legend endures. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the skies of history. Until next time, keep looking up.